Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So happy you're able to join us for a conversation with world-renowned writer Etgar Keret and with Yochai Maital, but we'll get into it in a moment. I'm Tammy Benheim. I'm the Minister for Public Diplomacy at the Embassy of Israel in Washington, D.C., and I'm super excited. And Lisa LaBourgeois is here with me, who does our cultural affairs. And yeah, I'll say for you two, we're seriously super excited to welcome you all to this event of the Jewish Community Relations Council and the United Jewish Federation of Tidewater, Virginia. It's also with the Simon Family JCC, with us, of course, at the Embassy of Israel and other community partners, and it's part of the 10th annual Israel Today series. The embassy has been a partner for years with this great series that has introduced us or reintroduced us and brought us many Israeli writers and cinematographers and directors, and some of the biggest names in Israeli literature and film. And today we definitely have one of those. I think the biggest names in the past few years, Etgar Keret. And he joins us during the National Jewish Book Month. So it's very apt and is part of our Lee and Bernard Jaffe Family Jewish Book Festival. I don't think I need to introduce him so much. He's definitely a singular voice in modern literature and definitely in Israeli modern literature. At once, Etgar Keret is dark and delightful and comedic and at times, I think, a little bit sad as well. His masterful short stories capture human experience in all of its inspiring beauty and perplexing shortcomings. And it's been bewitching readers with its surreal part of the story. Some of them are super real for years now. If I can just say something personal, when I came back to Israel to serve in the army back in the early 90s, very early 90s, Etgar Keret's, I think it's his first book, right, of short stories came out, Tzinorot, Pipes, and landing in that reality of Israel at the time and not knowing anything but reading the book, I think, I still remember actually reading it. I still have that copy, and I'm sure, like me, young readers today, but also people who were young readers back then and have grown up with his books, you always feel the tie of I think, the very Israeli experience in some parts you feel, but it's also a world and international experience. And we see this, how successful his books are around the world. So it's a um, very local stories, but I think in their way, they're also really speak to audiences worldwide. And I've had the privilege of meeting Etgar Keret in a few continents in my different positions, and we spoke about before of when he was in the book fair in Thessaloniki, and the hours he worked and the interest he garnered, and signing books and people coming and from everywhere asking him questions and showing interest was an amazing thing to see. And last year before Corona, when he was here in the States, it was I think the same reaction when he was here in a local university and talking. It's just amazing. Sorry. He was born in Tel Aviv in 1967. And as I said, he's a favorite author still of Israel's younger generation and not so young generation. And he's been an international success in almost in every field that he's attempted. His books have been published in 31 languages in 35 countries, and he's received numerous awards, including the Book Publishers Association Platinum Prize and Israel's Ministry of Culture Cinema Prize. In 2007, Etgar and Shira Geffen won the Cannes Film Festival Camera d'Or Award for their movie Jellyfish, and he lectures in Ben Gurion University in the Negev in Israel. And he's joining us this afternoon to sit down with us, and also Yochai Maital. They're the co-founders of Sipur Israeli, Israel Story, which is, I hope I'm okay, the Israeli version of this American life. And it has listeners all over the world as well, from 194 countries and more than 2 million downloads already. And it brings us, stories, again, big and small, but extraordinary stories of Israelis from I think, everywhere in Israel, of ordinary Israelis. Yochai, who's here with us, is a senior producer of the podcast and the radio show, and he works on the theme of journalism and arts. He combs Israel for stories every day, looking for the best way and the best stories and the best way to tell these stories. He currently lives in New York with his wife Daphna and their kids, but he wakes up every morning dreaming of Tel Aviv, maybe like I do here in DC, dreaming of Jerusalem. But thank you both so much for being here and being and answering our questions this afternoon. And they will, we leave it up to them. But I was just asked to tell you, please, anybody who has questions, do write them in the Q&A that you can see on the bottom right hand of your screen. Thank you so much. You have a jam-packed program for us, we know. So really, without further ado, which has been too much of ado, I pass it over to you. Looking forward.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you're muted, Edgar. Okay, yeah.
Not anymore.
Okay, great. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna say I'm also really. It's always exciting. I'm always happy to talk to you, Edgar. Edgar has been a long time sort of friend and mentor to me and to Israel Story, to the program, and it's been really amazing to have his sort of insight and collaboration on all kinds of things. I still remember when we just got the show started, actually driving with you to some ultra-Orthodox school in Elad and interviewing little kids for this back to school episode that we did, where we interviewed kids during recesses. And so usually when we meet, it's for a specific purpose. We sort of talk about one of your stories, and then you read it, or we bring an actor to read it, or we come to talk to you about a certain topic. But today we're actually meeting as part of the Lee and Bernard Jaffe Family Jewish Book Festival. And so I thought it would be great to take this opportunity to really make the topic of our conversation today you and sort of your writing and creation, much more than just writing over time. And also, I mean, just reiterating what was said in the opening, again, this is your opportunity as well to meet with Edgar. Unfortunately, we can't fly him over and all be there together. So please, send in your questions.
No, it would have been a pleasure, to eat hummus in Virginia with you, because Yochai and me, we have a hummus eating tradition. So I don't know how good hummus is in Virginia, and also to meet Tammy, which it's always a treat.
Yeah, next year, inshallah. So yeah, I mean, I want to actually also sort of start where Tammy ended with Tzinorot, which is your first book, and also my first sort of the first time I read your work. And I was a teenager at the time. I think I was like in ninth grade or eighth grade or something like that. And I remember it was a real shock for me reading that book, because it was the first time I read a book, and I felt like the writer of the book could be somebody that I recognize, or like I could not just relate to, but it felt like the way I hear people talk, of course, but I could just, even deeper than just sort of the writing, that it's very like, that it sounds like everyday talking and not very like highfalutin or different fancy words that I don't even really know what they mean. It was just like I could relate to him in some deep way. And it was very, very, I still remember in my emotional memory going down to another book fair that was in Haifa many years ago, and having that book, Tzinorot, signed by you. So I wanted to start actually by asking you about the cover to that book, because that book is very different from other books that I've read. It's very short stories, and the writing itself was very, very different. But how different it was apparent right from the cover of the book. Usually, the cover of the book has usually the editor writes it, and usually it's some going into sort of the literary praise of the book, and maybe a little bit of information about the author. And Tzinorot, pipes, the cover is very, very different. And how did that come to be?
Well, the thing was that I've written this book. I've I've began writing this book when I was 19 years old. So when you read me in high school, I wasn't that much older than you were, and I didn't know anything about the book publishing process. So luckily I was picked up by one of my professors in university who kind of came across my stories because I've never submitted to a publishing house, and he had edited this collection. And when he showed me the back cover text, I was really frustrated because it looked like any other book. You know, it said like a new voice. Oh yeah,
Sorry, that
a
was
new. Yeah, he said it's like he said a new voice in Hebrew literature, and all those kind of cliches that you usually read about books. And I wanted the back cover text to have an information that is essential about my style and about my the, the kind of poetics that I want to introduce, you know, through my book. And at some stage, he said to me, "You know what? You could just write whatever you want. I'll put it on the cover because I'm such a nudnik, you know, that in the end everybody gives up." And I remember it was Hanukkah, and I had to come up with the text, and I just moved from my parents' house to a rented apartment, so it was the first time that I was kind of celebrating a Hanukkah with no
alone.
family, but yeah, and I wanted to do something that would be festive, and I didn't even have a menorah, so I kind of made the menorah out of plastic toys that I found.
This whole story is very topical, and I feel like people should also be like, there are some takeaways here for this season.
In the end, you know, I kind of lit the first candle, you know, of Hanukkah, and I saw the candle and the menorah, and was very happy. But something felt wrong, and then when I saw that the menorah itself was on fire, I realized that making a menorah out of plastic toys wasn't the best idea, and it started this small fire that I had no problem to extinguish. You know, I just took a bucket of water and spilled it on the table. But doing so, I inhaled a lot of smoke, and being asthmatic, you know, I found myself very quickly in a ER of a Tel Aviv hospital, and the doctors that had approached me really had this kind of a George Clooney, a cool charm, you know, like blue eyes and this kind of silver hair. And he kind of came to me smiling, you know, it felt more as if I was entering an espresso store than an ER. And he says to me, how are you doing, mate? You know, please tell me what happened. And I started speaking, and I said to him, I built a menorah. And then he kind of just put his arm on my shoulder, and he said, "Friend, you don't have to tell me everything. Tell me just the important stuff." And I said to him, "I can't breathe." And he looked at me and said, "See, that was easy." And he kind of put this inhaler mask on my face, and I started kind of feeling better. And when he saw that you know that my pulse had stabilized and that I was breathing okay, he just left my bed and went to condescend other patient in the ward, and he left his
He went
prescription.
to condescend.
Yeah. No, it's like he had this kind of attitude to say, "Oh, like you know, with those
Doctors be
jokes, you
doctors.
know, like you know those doctors that amputate one leg, and you say, ah, you know, who needs two legs? You know, it's like kind of he had this kind of aura around him, and he left his prescription notebook behind him, and I basically scribbled something on it. And when they released me, I took that note with me, and this became the back cover text, and it goes like this.
Great, yeah.
When you have an asthma attack, you can't breathe. When you can't breathe, you can hardly talk. To make a sentence, all you get is the air in your lungs, which isn't much. 3 to 6 words, if that. You learn the value of words. You rummage through the jumble in your head, choose the crucial ones, and those cost you too. Let healthy people toss out whatever comes to mind the way you throw out the garbage. When an asthmatic says, I love you, and when an asthmatic says, I love you madly, there's a difference. the difference of a word, and the word is a lot. It could be stop or inhaler. It could even be ambulance.
Thank you. I really love that. I'm just going to say there are a few people that wrote in some questions, and we'll get to your questions. Okay. I'm just telling everybody here that I noticed the questions, and we'll get to them.
But I just wanted to say something
Yeah.
about this text that it's a kind of, I thought about it while reading it now, that that many times I try to explain what we get from the poetic process. What do we get from writing stories and reading stories? And I think that there are many answers to that, but one of them, I think that there is something for me very comforting in the ability to take reality and put it in your frame, in a new frame. And I was born asthmatic, so all my life I suffered from asthma. Asthma was, if you'd wish, my curse. I had to take medicines. When I played sport, I wasn't as good as I wanted to be, and all those things. It kind of limited me. And when I write these stories, and suddenly in this text, asthma also becomes a superpower. It kind of becomes, because when you have asthma, then you have to choose your words, and you don't lie and you don't bullshit, and you just say the things that count. So I've been trained all my life through asthmatics to be able to to have this kind of focus. And this is exactly, I think, the things that literature can do. It kind of reframe our experiences. And basically, after writing this story, it's not that I enjoy now that I have an asthmatic, but I think that there is some kind of an acknowledgement that it's a part of my identity. That if I wouldn't have an asthma, then I would probably be a different guy, and I do slightly different things, and I wouldn't have, I don't know, wouldn't have become the consciousness that I am. So I think that this is the kind of conclusions that that I can't just sit in my room and say, asthma is also good, because it isn't, I guess. But when I write a text, I really understand how beyond kind of being good or bad, how something is actually a part of my identity.
Mm. Also, I just want to add, like, as also like a storyteller, there's this sort of thing. There's this concept of showing and not telling, and I think one of the reasons I love this cover so much is that it's like instead of telling what is the writing in the book about, what it's going to be like, what are you going to experience, what is the author about, it's like showing it.
Oh yeah, it's like, when we discussed this book, then I remember that the editor said, we can also take a paragraph, or or a page, from the book, and put it on the back cover. And I said to him, that feels like cheating, because the back cover is another page. Like, why should we print something? We should write something new. It's like kind of reheating an old meal. Like, if they're going to read it, they're going to get to it. And if they don't, let them read something else.
Yeah. Alyssa is asking about the book cover of Pipes. Is that a book that came out in English as Pipes?
No, in English, actually, I've read it from this book called the Girl on the Fridge, which is a collection of my earlier story. Basically, the stories that I've written during my IDF service mostly. And the Israeli covers, there were two covers. I think the original one was Munch's Shout, the famous painting, or it's not, it's a wood carving. And later on, it became this kind of an image that looks a little bit from those tests or quizzes, when they show you something and they ask you what's wrong with the picture. I don't know if you can see, but this kid has no nose, and the fruits are kind of growing up. So there are many kind of mistakes that you can find in the cover. And the and the thing about all my covers is that I'm very much involved in my covers, which doesn't mean that they look like I want them to. It means that sometimes my publisher wants to have a different cover, and I cry and suffer and complain. But for me, the idea is that when I write a book, I feel that this book is a part of me. I don't know, like, we have these cliches that they say that books are like babies. So I don't know, like, I mean, it's not like a baby because it you know, you don't have to pay for its education,
Change diapers.
and it never calls you on your birthday. You know, it's really it's not a baby, but at the same time, I feel that, you know, that if you work for 5 or 6 years on a book, then you can put a month in it just to find a good cover, or you can put an extra few weeks just to see that the layout is okay. And the funny thing was that in Israel, whenever they would print my books, I would go to the printers, and apparently no writer goes to the printings of their books because they're not needed there. And I remember I would always come. They usually would start printing at 6 a.m. and I would buy cookies. So the guys at the printing place, you know, at the printer's place, will be kind of nice for me because, you know, I'm just a stranger going around. So I would kind of make them coffee and kind of eat cookies, and basically, like, you know, because I've been publishing books for close to 30 years, then they got used to it. Like, you know, last time I came, I was a
They're
little bit
expecting
late.
cookies.
Yeah, I forgot to bring cookies, and they said, "Where are the cookies?" Like, you know,
Yeah.
and I said to them, "What can I say? You know, fame went to my head. You know, I don't."
That's actually a really good segue for my next question, Edgar. So when Tsinorot came out, I mean, we were talking a lot about it now, but back then it actually didn't do so well.
No,
Didn't sell many
commercially, no,
copies. And
no, it didn't.
only later, in a couple of years later, in 1994, your book Gagwai Le Kissinger was published, and
Yeah,
that sort of went viral and made it big, and then many people sort of went back and bought Zinorot, and also in English, it was like those earlier stories were actually published a little bit later.
yeah,
Um, so I wanted to maybe you'll read us a short story from Gagwai Le Kissinger.
of course.
Um, this is, I'll just say though, this story we're talking about before, like Tsinorot was sort of like an underground secret, and Gagwai Le Kissinger sort of went big, and this is maybe the most famous story from there, and it all really sort of made it into the like consensus, you could say, is the sort of the Israeli culture. It's even taught in high schools. It's part of the curriculum for the literary matriculation, high school matriculation exams, etc. And just a great story. So maybe you'll read it, and then we'll talk a little bit about that book and that time.
Breaking the pig. Dad wouldn't buy me a Bart Simpson doll. Mom actually said yes, but Dad said I was spoiled. Why should we, huh? He said to Mom. Why should we buy him one? All it takes is one little squeak from him and you jump to attention. Dad said I had no respect for money, and that if I didn't learn it when I was young, when would I? Kids who get Bart Simpson dolls too easily grow up to be punks who steal from candy stores because they're used to getting whatever they want the easy way. So instead of a Bart Simpson doll, he bought me an ugly porcelain pig with a slot in its back. And now I grow up to be okay. Now I won't be a punk. Every morning I have to drink a cup of cocoa, even though I hate it. Cocoa with skin is a shekel, without skin it's half a shekel, and if I throw up right away, I don't get anything. I put the coins into the pig's back, and when you shake it, it rattles. When the pig is full and it doesn't rattle when you shake it, I get a Bart Simpson on a skateboard. That's what Dad says. That way it's educational. Actually, the pig's cute. His nose is cold when you touch it, and he smiles when you push the shekel into his back, and when you push in half a shekel too. But the nicest thing is that he smiles even when you don't. I gave him a name. I called him Margolis, after a man who used to live in our mailbox and my dad couldn't peel off his label. Margolis isn't like my other toys. He's much calmer, without lights and springs and batteries that click. Only you have to watch that he doesn't jump off the table. Margolis, be careful. You're made of porcelain. I remind him when I catch him bending down a bit to look at the floor. And he smiles at me and waits patiently for me to take him down myself. I love it when he smiles. It's only because of him that I drink the cocoa with the skin every morning. so that I can push a shekel into his back and watch how his smile doesn't change at all. I love you, Margolis, I tell him afterward. Honest, I love you more than mom and dad. And I'll always love you, no matter what, even if you break into candy stores. But don't even think of jumping off the table. Yesterday, Dad came and picked Margolis up off the table, began to shake him wildly and to turn him upside down. Be careful, Dad, I said to him. You're giving Margolis a tummy ache. But Dad didn't stop. It's not making a noise anymore. You know what that means, don't you? Tomorrow you get a Bart Simpson on a skateboard. That's great, Dad, I said. A Bart Simpson on a skateboard, great. Just stop shaking Margolis, it's making him dizzy. Dad put Margolis back on the table and went to call Mom. He came back a minute later, pulling her with one hand and holding a hammer in the other. See? I was right, he said to Mom. Now we know that things have value, right, you Avi? Sure I do, I said. Sure. But what's the hammer for? It's for you, said Dad, and put the hammer in my hand. Just be careful. Sure I'll be careful, I said, and I was. But after a few minutes, Dad got fed up and said, Go on then, break the pig. What, I asked. Break Margolis? Yes, Margolis, said Dad. Go on, break it. You've earned the Bart Simpson. You've worked hard enough for it. Margolis smiled at me with the sad smile of a porcelain pig who knows his end is near. To hell with the Bart Simpson. Me hit a friend on the head with a hammer? I don't want the Bart Simpson. I gave Dad the hammer back. Margolis is enough for me. You don't understand, said Dad. It's all right. It's educational. Come on. I'll break it for you. Dad was lifting the hammer. Looking at Mom's crushed eyes and Margolis' tired smile, I knew it was up to me. If I didn't do something, he was dead. Dad, I grabbed him by the leg. What is it, you Avi? Said Dad, his hammer hand poised in midair. May I have another shekel, please? I begged. One more shekel to push inside him, tomorrow, after the cocoa, and then we'll break him. Tomorrow, I promise. Another shekel? Dad smiled and put the hammer down. You see, the boy has learned self-restraint. Yes, self-restraint, I said. Tomorrow. There were tears in my throat already. When they left the room, I hugged Margolis very tight and let the tears out. He didn't say anything, only trembled quietly in my hands. Don't worry, I whispered in his ear. I'll save you. That night I waited for Dad to finish watching TV in the living room and go to bed. Then I got up very quietly and sneaked out through the porch with Margolis. We walked in the dark for a long time, until we reached a thorny field. Pigs are crazy about fields, I told Margolis as I put him down on the ground. Especially fields with thorns. You like it here. I waited for an answer, but Margolis didn't say anything. And when I touched him on the nose to say goodbye, he just gave me a sad look. He knew he'd never see me again.
Thank you so much. I actually don't want to talk about this story that I like. I like it so much, but I wanted to just sort of sink in because I feel like everybody can take it to so many different places. And just ask you sort of about that period, like sort of after you wrote Sinorot, before you wrote Gagwai Kissinger, and how was it being like an anonymous writer and then sort of gaining recognition? Was it hard? Were there like periods where you're like, I shouldn't be doing this? Did you ever even want to be a writer?
Well, I think that the big change between my life before publishing Missing Kissinger and after Missing Kissinger was the fact that I kind of lost my day job, because when I published my first book, I worked in construction. And basically when I published Missing Kissinger, and it sold I would say 100 times more than my first book, then suddenly everybody said, we'll give you an advance. You don't have to go to work, sit at home, write stories. And there was something about it that I understood that this was the process, but I didn't know how to live my life without any frame, without basically getting up to work, without returning tired, taking a shower. All my friends were working. So there was something a little bit confusing about that. And I must say that it immediately pushed me into filmmaking because I really wanted to interact with people and to be with people, and not having a job. I said, okay, I'll make a movie and then everybody will have to come.
It's almost like as if we coordinated your answers to like lead me to the next questions. It's really amazing. So actually, I'm going to jump forward a little bit to 2007 and to Jellyfish. So a lot of people know you as Etgar Keret, the writer, but actually you're just generally very, very creative, and you've done things in cinema and dance and graphic novels and comedic skits and script writing. And so I wanted to, so I wanted to, in 2007, you actually moved from sort of the writing position to the director's chair, and directed a movie that Shira, your wife, wrote.
Yeah, we co-directed it. We directed it.
Co-directed it. Yeah, and so I was wondering, how was that for you? Do you want us to watch the clip first and then talk about it, or talk first and then?
Oh, I can say something. The idea was that Shira is she also does many things, but in her soul, I think she's a poet, and she wrote this beautiful screenplay that I really, really loved. And because at the time I already knew almost all the leading filmmakers in Israel, I said to Shira that we should audition directors. We should take the two top directors, our two favorite directors, give them the script, and then see what they have to say. And the guy who be more kind of interesting and imaginative in his concept of the script, we will give him the script and he'll direct it. And then we gave it to two directors, and they didn't like the script, and I was shocked. Like, one of them said to me, this isn't the script, it's a 85 pages poem. And I said to him, oh, no, it is a script. And he said, yeah, you're saying that because you don't know anything about cinema and because your wife wrote it. And then I basically came back to Shira and I said to Shira, look, they're dumb. They don't see that it's great. We don't need them. We'll make the film ourselves. And then Shira said, but we don't know how to direct. And I said to her, this is the problem that I have with you. This is the problem we have in our relationship. Because when your husband says, we're going to do it, you don't need to demoralize me. You need to support me. You need to say, okay, husband, we're going to do it together. And then she said, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, husband, we're going to do it together. And, and she went to the kitchen, and I was left alone. And after kind of my anger at those directors and my anger at Shira for not supporting me had kind of subsided, I said to myself, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Because I just forced my wife to say, let's direct it, and now I'll have to direct it. And I actually not sure that I know how to direct a feature film. So I think that, that we entered this kind of adventure really like like learning to walk, or like trying to do something new. And I think that a lot of the things that we did in the movie were not done the way that usually filmmakers do them. And sometimes it worked against us, but in many times it was actually an advantage, that we were not professional, we were just passionate.
Yeah, I'll just follow up with a question from Nati here, from the audience, who is interested to know, I mean, do you and Shira, you answered it to some extent here, but do you and Shira help each other in writing? Is she the first one to read your stories, or the last one? How is it working?
So we do support each other. I think, like, I wouldn't say that,
I'll just say, maybe for those who don't know, in the participants here, that Shira Geffen is also, your wife is also a very talented writer and filmmaker and
playwright. Yeah, she writes children books. She does many things, and so I say that, I think that both of us kind of really think highly of each other's opinion, but I'm not sure that we are the first default reader of our text. It's like, I mean, Shira will never shoot a script. that I didn't read before, and I'll never publish a book that she haven't read before. But many times, I can show it to a friend or show it to my editor, and because I think that there is this kind of thing that the moment that you have a very kind of rigid process about I write a story, I show it to this guy, I get a support, then I think for me it's against the kind of spirit of writing. Sometimes I write a story and the first person whoever reads it or hear it is the guy from our supermarket that I really like. And and I go and I say, oh, I just wrote this story, and he says, oh, I have a coffee break, and he can sit and I can read it to him from my phone. And I think that the fact that that it's kind of it's living and breathing, it's a great idea. It's like, for example, Lev, our 15-year-old son, he usually doesn't read my stories. But the title story of my latest story, it's not the title story in the Hebrew edition. My story, Glitch at the Edge of the Galaxy, that you've made a beautiful sound podcast out of. Then he was the first person who had ever read it, just because it was about an escape room, and he likes escape rooms, and he never read any of my books. So I think my stories are just kind of floating in the air, and I don't know, somebody grabs them and he becomes my reader or my influence for the process.
So let's watch a short clip from the movie Jellyfish, which again it won the prizes in Cannes Film Festival and others as well, and it's just a very beautiful. Do you want to set up the clip? This is
So in the story, basically, our hero Batya, she works in a catering in a wedding hall, and one day she goes to the beach, and basically something happens.
Okay, here we go. You find that beautiful girl.
It's amazing because we've auditioned many girls, and the thing with Nicole, the girl that we chose, there were two problems with her. That we looked for a 5-year-old girl, and she was actually less than 5. She was, because usually you take older girls for the part or older boys, but she was actually younger, which is a really difficult age, to have the discipline to be in a movie. And the other thing was that she was scared of water. And as you see, that she comes out of the sea and she has underwater scenes. And the thing about it was that when we did audition, like we said, you're the best, but it may be problematic, and you can only do it if you want to act. And she says, oh, I don't want to act. And we said, you don't want to act? And she said, oh, no, my parents want me to act. And I said, oh, okay, so maybe we shouldn't do it. And she said, no, I'm in it too, not because of the acting, but because I get to skip kindergarten and go to sleep late. So apparently she kind of developed an acting career as a way of kind of escaping the system in school. And the thing was that she was amazing, and she had wonderful expression with a huge scope. But luckily we didn't. Sheila wrote a part that didn't make her talk, because I think that there was something about her existence being a strange creature, that if she would have said anything, in her cute child voice, it would have demystified it. So her silence kind of made her much more mysterious and charismatic than a 4-year-old girl can be.
Yeah, totally. Okay, I'm like fast forwarding here. I hope it's okay because I want to get to so many different things here.
Great.
And I want to get now to one of the to a book you wrote, I think or published at least in 2013, The 7 Good Years. Also, we have some shout outs here in the Q&A, not exactly questions, but Susan here writes that, as a fellow child of a Polish Holocaust survivor who lived in Israel for 21 years, every story in that book resonated with me to the depth of my soul. And to me as well, I don't have a specific reason, but for some reason that book also really I connected to it very deeply. And also it was an interesting, I mean, it was a move for you. It was very different from things you've done up until then, because it was a move from fictional, very like stories that also involve a lot of not just fictional, stories that you made up, but also a lot of sort of fantastical things happening, people being stuck to the ceiling or, disappearing into tubes. And all of a sudden, this is just, nonfiction stories about your life, your family. Um, and I know that when you wrote this book in Hebrew, but it was published in English. And I was wondering if you can.
Yeah, I think it was published, I think, in like maybe around 30 languages, but so I think the first place it came out in was Turkey, but the thing was that it was a strange book for me because
But yeah, but it wasn't published in Hebrew, right? Or maybe,
no, it
yeah,
wasn't published in Hebrew, and I guess maybe it will probably never be published in Hebrew.
yeah.
But the 7 Good Years is basically about the 7 years between the birth of my son and the death of my father. And I think that there was something about the death of my father that I really, really loved and admired, that I kind of like, I wanted to shout out, to say, to say to the world what a great dad he was. And I think that this was the kind of the first motivation that drove me into nonfiction, because usually my process is something happened and I say, okay, what I feel like is like a kamikaze pilot in the Japanese army in the Second World War that decides that he wants to open a sushi place. That's how I feel like. So let's write a story about this guy. And the idea of kind of keeping things raw was kind of scary for me, because I think that in fiction you can be totally honest and expose your emotion, but you don't expose your life. And when you write a story, people can say to you, this character sucks. But when you write a story about your father or your late father, and people say your dad sucks, it's kind of like the stakes are higher. So it was a big leap for me, and writing about those kind of 7 years, because my parents being Holocaust survivors, they really didn't have this kind of closure, this ability, let's say, for my mother to hold me as a baby and show it to her parents. Her parents died in the Second World War. She was an orphan, so she couldn't do that. And this idea of continuation, of being kind of having a son who represents the future for me, and having a father who kind of watches my back and my past, it felt like a womb, and I knew how to appreciate it with my parents being orphaned. And I think that when I finished the book, I was really, really happy with it. But before publishing it, I really wanted the consent of my son, because half of the book is about my father and half of it about a son. It's about being a father to your child and a child to your father. And I asked his permission to publish it. And for me, it was like a very technical move, like, to say, is it okay that I do this? It's like, when you get on a bus and say, may I sit here? When you see an empty seat, then you really don't expect anybody to say no. And then when I asked my son for permission to publishing it, he said, no, I don't want you to publish it. And I said to him, why? And he said, I don't see any advantage in the fact that people I know nothing of will know a lot of stuff about me. And basically, in the book, even though he's a child, there is a part of how he cheats his kindergarten teacher, and another part about how he has some kind of megalomaniac aspirations and all kind of stuff. So he was very sensitive to that, and he said, I don't want you to publish it. And basically, it took me 7 years to write the book, So this idea is that I can't publish it, it was really frustrating, but at the same time, I kind of accepted it, because when you write about somebody's life, even if he's a child, you cannot impose it on him. And then after thinking about it a little bit, I said to him, and what if I don't publish it in Hebrew, if I publish it in other countries? So he hesitated for a moment, and then he looked at me and said, they're going to pay you? Which is a very strange question for a 7-year-old kid, And I said, yeah, it's going to pay me. So he said, so I guess it's okay, because I don't know anybody overseas, And so the book got published, and at some stage, it got published, it got translated to Farsi, it came out in Indonesia, it
I
came
was
out.
just going to say, I just was in a bookstore looking up some of your quotes in English and stuff, and I saw there was on the bookshelves, not like a few blocks from my house here, your book in Farsi. I was like, wow.
Yeah, so it's
Wow.
crazy. And the idea is that I wrote a book about my life that could be read in Farsi. You know, it was published in Afghanistan but smuggled actively to Iran. You know, I've met a guy who works in the army that said to me that he saw bulletins in Farsi from the internal defense or something office, saying that if somebody send you a PDF or an actual copy of the book, that you should know that there is no person called Etgar Keret, and that this book was written by the Mossad to confuse Iranians about their opinion of Israel. So it was very strange that, you know, that if I go to
This is not true,
Tehran,
you're saying. It's not true.
no, so I'm saying if I go to Tehran with my sons, there will be readers high-fiving me, but actually the neighbors in my own building never got to read the book, you know. So it's a very strange situation.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about this book and also the move to nonfiction. So there's criticism towards your sort of how you kind of blur the lines sometimes between fiction and nonfiction and sort of not being 100% factual. I think there's a quote that I love that you once were asked about what you think about lying, and you said correct me if I'm butchering it or if it's wrong, but something about to the effect that lying is kind of like, lies are kind of like butter, that it's not good to like eat the whole thing, but you can put a little bit on the bread, it's okay, or something
It's
like
a
that.
it's a different metaphor, but it's good. No, but what I usually say about lying, that a lie, like every lie has a subtext. It's like, I mean, if I broke something and I don't know, my wife enters the room and says, "Who broke it?" and I say, "Yochai did," then the motivation of my lie is really is cowardice. You know, is the idea is that I want to escape the consequences. But for example, if I meet you and you had a haircut and you say, "How is my haircut?" and I say, "Oh, it's nice," and it's actually very ugly, you know, then basically the motivation of my lie is so you won't feel bad, you know, that you had a bad haircut. So I say that for me a lie is like a tool. So for example, a hammer, it could be helpful if you want to put a nail in the wall, and it could be a weapon with which you could kill somebody. So I don't subscribe to the fact that not getting all the facts straight in some context, you know, is uh, is something that gets you further away from the truth. You know, it's really like, I mean, if you are afraid of dog and a small dog was barking at you and you got really scared and you go back to your wife and you say, this really scary dog was barking at me, then basically you're honest to your experience, you know, even if you're not honest to dog sizes, you know, then you are telling, you know, it was really scary, he was barking, he was at my throat. Maybe he wasn't at your throat, maybe he was just barking at you from a distance. But what you many times do, you share your experience, you know. And I think that, you know, that as a writer, you have a license for subjectivity, because everything that is written in the book, I think that there are like two kind of fast chapters in it, you know, but all the other stuff that is written is totally factually true. You know, it's really, I think there were those two Dutch filmmakers. They made a documentary about me called Edgar Keret, based on a true story, and it won the international Emmy. I think that probably people can see it in the States somewhere. And basically, the entire film, which was a feature film, was them trying to find out if the crazy stories that I'm saying are lies or the truth. And basically, for most of the time, you know, they discover that the most ridiculous stories that I tell in events or in the 7 Good Years are actually factually true.
Yeah. So the 7 Good Years deals a lot with your father, of course, and you're what we call in Israel dor sheni. So both of your parents are Holocaust survivors, and you're second generation. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit with you a little bit about sort of the role that you feel that has played in your upbringing and in your creation. Um, I also want to take us actually back chronologically to maybe this is a good time to show a little clip from the Chamishiyah.
Okay.
Should I show it now and then we'll talk about?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's do it. All right. So this is I'll just give you some backgrounds to, I'm sure whoever's Israeli here knows about the Chamishiya Kamerit, but they were like an iconic comedy group.
It's a little bit like Saturday Night Live, I would say, but it was made in the early 90s, you know, so it's really nostalgic stuff.
It's nostalgic, but it's still very much alive. Like a lot of there are a lot of idioms in Hebrew, in modern Hebrew, that come from there, and people often still quote it because they're very sort of sharp and poignant.
Well, actually, we can check with Tammy, but one of the things that was very common in the Israeli foreign minister was the expression from the sketch called "Haven't the Jewish people suffered enough?"
Yeah, so this is you'll hear it now, but really this has become an expression that's still quite widely used, and then we'll have a little bit of conversation about it afterwards. So here it goes.
Excuse me, just a moment, please. מחזיר, כמו חדש, מה אתה מסתכל?
Hello and good evening. We are from the Israeli delegation, and we wanted to
ask for a favor. Look, I'll be honest with you. It's about the Bahurchik in under 6, the little one. He is, how do you say, not very fast.
Slow even, very.
But very talented.
Very.
And we want to ask you for a little favor. Nothing big, just to give him 5-6 meter fall.
Wolfgang! Come on, what do you say? Only 6 meters. Anywhere he will get lost. We just want to smaller the השפלה. You know, it's not nice. His mother is in the, איך אומרים, stadium.
In the stadium.
Look over there, his mother. Very brave woman. After all she's been through, she came back to here to see her son running. It breaks the heart.
Wolfgang? Look at them. They are all steroids. Only him with the fisalach like a מקלות של ארטיקים. What we asking from you? Just a little help to smaller the historic עוול.
No, what do you say? 8 meters?
וולפגנג. אתם הגויים, לב של אבן יש לכם. All you want to להשפיל אותנו.
תירגע, פלדרמאוס.
שאני ארגע? שהכלב יירגע. How do you not ashamed? You not see Schindler? All the television of the world watching us? You don't care. Haven't the Jewish people suffered enough? Haven't the Jewish people suffered enough?
תירגע, פלדרמאוס. חבל על הנרבים, תירגע.
מה כבר ביקשנו? למדליה ביקשנו, לנצח. 9 מטר, זה הכל. מה התענוג שלו להשפיל? Come on, finish the work. I'm a Jew too. Finish the work. Finish the work. Come on, go.
פלדרמאוס, די.
חתיכת טכנוקרט, אייכמן.
I'm sorry, guys.
The Jewish people, thank you very much. You are a great man. Thank you very much.
עוד, קח את זה עוד. Stop! Not too much! He's a good boy.
Yeah. You are a great man. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. פסח כשר שיהיה לך. Thank you.
After this, we take your details and we build a big tree on your name in the Hasidic Boulevard Universe in Jerusalem.
Ja. Dankeschön. Dankeschön.
Just a small thing, if it's not too much. Before you boom,
Ja.
just give him a little with the eye, so he can be prepared.
With the eye.
He's a good boy.
Hint. Ja. Gut.
He's a good boy.
Gut.
Thank you.
Shalom.
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 Thank you.
Shalom. Shalom.
Auf der Platze! Fertig! Boom!
All right.
Yeah, so I can say something about the sketch that basically I was with my parents one day, and there was a Israeli politician, I won't even say his name, it was like, almost 30 years ago, that was dealing with some criticism that we had from Europe. And the criticism was about us violating human rights or doing something that had to do with the territories. And his answer was this kind of very angry speech that he says, how dare you, Germany, criticize us after you killed our people? How dare you, Holland, after sending all your countries, you're not going to tell us what that justice is. And when he finished his address, then I saw that my parents were really, really frustrated and angry. And my mother said, I didn't lose my entire family, so some second-rate politician will use their blood as an argument when he can't defend his actions. And then my father, for the only time in his life, he said, I want you to write something about this. And I said to him, Dad, that's not what I do. I can't write a story. And he said, you're a smart kid. You'll find a way to write about it. And basically, I was going with this kind of sensation for about 3 or 4 days in my head. And then I wrote this sketch. And when this sketch was shot and screened, it created a big uproar in Israel, because a lot of the people, especially in the religious right, thought that it was kind of disrespectful for the memory of the Holocaust. While my parents had really loved it, they really felt that it proved the point. And when they called, I think, my dad or my mom, and they talked to her and they said, well, how do you feel that your son is making fun of the Holocaust? And my dad said, he's not making fun of the Holocaust, he's making fun of people who exploit the memory of the Holocaust. And and that's what you should do, you should make fun of them. And it was for me, like, it was maybe the first time in my life when I find myself in the middle of a kind of a national polemic. It was in the parliament. There were a movement to cancel the show, to fire the people who had worked in it and stuff like that. And it was the first time where I was not in my writer's seat, but I was suddenly kind of a guy in the middle of a polemic.
Yeah. So listen, Edgar, I was afraid this was going to happen, but that we kind of are running out of time. I have a whole bunch of other more clips and things I wanted to play, but I don't think we'll have time for that. I do want to, if it's okay, just a few more minutes, keep you on and ask you, and Moshe Springer is also asking, and this can maybe be a good segue for us. He says, you recently created some great projects for TV. Are you working on anything new for TV or in general that we should be looking forward to these days? So maybe we can end just with that question, and also just, generally, like, what have you been up to? How is this weird, period we're living through now caught you?
Well, I must say that the time of the pandemic were times that it made me super creative. Because
also, I'll just say, like, moving back maybe to like the beginning of our conversation, you're asthmatic, you still are, so you're definitely deep in the Kvutzat Sikun, and the
I have background the illnesses that I should be careful. I'm trying to, but what I want to say is that I think that if I try to look down at it, I think that the things that usually get my creativity going is anxiety, boredom, and frustration. And and with the coronavirus, I have plenty of all those frees. With all this kind of a lockdown, I have a lot to be bored about. I'm usually traveling and very active, and I can't move. I have a lot of anxieties because, as I said, I have a background illness. I'm afraid of the future. And it's also very frustrating, so I think all those things kind of make me write, because I began writing during my compulsory army service, and I was a terrible soldier, and it was very difficult for me. And in the end, all of this kind of had accumulated to some kind of a pressure that has exploded in my first collection of stories. And now I feel something that it's not the same, but it's in many ways similar. This kind of idea of kind of being kind of pushed away from my comfort zone and losing my balance. I think that there is something very authentic about this. It's not that I yearn for it, but I think that, that there is something about the coronavirus that had broken the force of inertia in everybody's life. And when you have to kind of face it, you know, you see stuff. It's not necessarily good stuff, but you see things that you haven't seen before. And this is usually what sent me to write a story or to work on a script or to make a short movie. And I'm doing all of these right now. You know, it's really like I think that the new project that I'm working on, I'm working with Alma Arael, a super talented, originally Israeli, but now living for many years in the US, a film director. She had made a movie, A Honey Boy, and we're working on a TV series based on one of my stories called Island for Amazon Prime. You know,
Oh wow!
fingers crossed it's gonna happen. Yeah.
Great, great. And I'll try and maybe through Lee and I'll try and send all of you participants. I'll try and send you a few links to some YouTubes of things that Etgar has also done recently during the pandemic.
Great.
There's a beautiful art and dance video based on one of your stories that you did together with Inbal Pinto and a bunch of other things that I sadly didn't get a chance to show. Thank you so much, Etgar. It's so fun. Oh, as always, it's so fun talking to you.
Yeah, it's
And,
great. It's just a shame that it's through Zoom, you know. And
I know. I really hope we'll meet either in Israel or in New York. Actually, I have a friend who just opened an amazing hummus place here at the East Side. You'll think you're in Yafo.
Yeah. So if there's no flight, I guess I have to swim to New York again. Just wait for me with a towel and we go and have a hummus.
You got it. You got it. Thank you so much, Etgar.
Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.
No, don't go. We have some more things.
I just want to say thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We've been really happy to be a part of this program, and we're really proud of our participation in Israel Today, which is something that I love being a part of. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I just want to say also to not miss our next Israel Today event with Israel Story, and we'll be in conversation with actor Ala Daka, who's the star of Fauda. So stay tuned. You can visit jewishva.org/Israel Today for more information and register. And on behalf of all of us here, thank you so much and have a good afternoon.
Yeah, and we're also looking forward sometime soon to see you in person. Stay well, stay safe.